It was an extremely volatile, dangerous place.
The combustion that occurred is almost predictable because the state of New York would make deals with the Native Americans and then wouldn't keep them.
This is Mohawk territory. People kept shooting at the gate, but they never looked into it until somebody got shot.
And so there was a standoff there. These are our ancestral lands. But we always felt that we'd been cheated out of that territory. So it was inevitable that something had to be done. That's our duty. The Mohawk name is Ganienkeh, which is from the Bear Clan at the Mohawk community of Akwesasne. Governance has always been important to the Mohawk people. We had traditional government. Leadership was appointed through the three clans. They were balanced, so you had an equal number of male leaders and equal number of female leaders. But the Indian Reorganization Act in the U.S. and the Indian Act in Canada forcibly imposed what they call a band council system. And what they do is they oversee elections in accordance with Canadian or American procedures. And it sets up this competitive system that was alien to Mohawk governance. There was a great deal of internal hostility between the Longhouse people who supported traditional governance and the band council. Either you were for traditional governments and the revival of Longhouse, or else you were part of the elected system, which was a dirty phrase. People would call those of my generation who actually voted as sellouts, that even casting a ballot was an act of betrayal. By the 1970s, at Ganienkeh, across from Montreal, people were concerned that there was encroachment into the community by people who were not Native and were not Mohawks. They thought that the band council was not doing anything about these people settling on the territory. Something had to be done.
Well, we're all from Ganienkeh, and we had our families there, and we lived on the farm. It was a normal place. We had our ceremonies. But in 1973, and all our young people were getting married, starting families, and they had no place to live because there was all non-Indians staying there.
That area north of the east branch of Delaware River, all the way to Montreal, and from Lake Champlain corridor into an area north of Utica. And within that region, that's Mohawk territory.
On May 13th, 74, that was the night we left. It was nice on the farm, and hated to leave it, but that was our decision. It's all we had with us is what we could fit in our van. We left everything behind. Yeah.
I was 12. It was like an adventure.
We all lived like in a caravan, following each other. And we drove for hours.
It was really exciting.
I was all winding roads.
Are we there yet?
We got there, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, pouring rain. That was Moss Lake.
This program was produced by Ganienkeh Communications and Radio Akwesasne of the Mohawk Nation. I'm Jackie Sharp. A group of Native Americans left their homes on reservations and traveled to Eagle Bay in the heart of the Adirondacks. There they made shelter, planted gardens, and established the new nation of Ganienkeh.
Where we were was previously a girls' camp. We renamed it Ganienkeh, Land of the Flint.
This was a summer camp for people of wealth, and it was just physically a very beautiful place. Enchanting, nice lake with that house in the middle of the lake on a small island. That's how I saw it, and I had been able to come and meet with my brother and sister who actually resided there. In May of 1974, the camp is vacant. It is actually state land.
It was more like a nice camp for vacationing. But we weren't on vacation.
A lot of the other territories, there's drinking and drugs. And we wanted to get away from that stuff because through all these years, we see what it does to our people. It causes a lot of damage.
And different nations that were helping us.
At Moss Lake, we just investigate everywhere. We used to play in the mountains all the time, go fishing, swimming. There was always work too. The women took turns cooking. There was always somebody chopping wood. But the work didn't always seem like work. I guess there was so many of us, it just made it fun. But it didn't stay that way.
I'm Lou Grummet, and I spent most of my life in public policy. Actually, all of my life in public policy. I grew up in West Virginia. My father was a terrible alcoholic. It would have been better if I hated him. I'd say I didn't really hate him. I didn't care about him. My sister, who I was very close to, when we were in high school, she was a senior and I was a freshman. We would sit and talk, and he would come stumbling up the stairs and fall into his soup, and we wouldn't care. When I went away to school, I never went home again. In spring of '76, I was the director of intergovernmental relations to the Secretary of State of New York, Mario Cuomo. And in that capacity, he would have me do various things. And one of those things was the negotiation with the Moss Lake Indians. He wasn't going to be sitting up in the North Country. He referred to it as continual Lent. They had been sitting on the land for 2 years. The governor didn't want to do anything about that because the Second Wounded Knee massacre was 2 years earlier, and Attica was 4 years earlier, and nobody wanted a shootout. Get these people off the land. That was my order. But I had a tremendous sympathy for the drug and alcohol issues at Caughnawaga. Those kids are all being raised the way I was. And I wanted to make life better. Their goal, as near as I can tell, was just to be alone. But the local folks were all irritated. They wanted these people out. They thought they'd broken all the laws.
If I ever tried anything like that, I'd get thrown right in jail. I wouldn't get away with it.
If this is allowed to continue, who will be the next group to come along and seize another piece of state land?
The communications between the local populace and the Mohawks was not working. And some of them decided that they would shoot at the Indians the way their ancestors did.
In October of '74, a car that had been a frequent harasser was driving up and down, yelling things out the window, throwing things out the window. And the Mohawks claimed was shooting at them. And a couple hours later, a similar car was coming down the road. And the Mohawks shot at the car, and they hit a 9-year-old girl, and they hurt her. And now we have blood on the streets. And now people were demanding that something happen.
Remember, this is only 3 short years after Attica. We watched that, and we knew then if so ordered, the troopers were they would enter Ganienkeh. We were told that once the troopers came in, and if we were given orders, then we were to open fire. And fortunately, that never happened.
Everybody was foot dragging. The DA was foot dragging, we were foot dragging, the state police were foot dragging, and the Mohawks were more than foot dragging. We were not looking for a fight. That case has never been in court. They understood that it had gotten too hot to handle in Moss Lake. My orders were get a deal. And the easiest deal was to give them land. And we were looking for land that the state of New York might be willing to part with.
It had to have water and land to grow food on and to have the animals. Anything less wasn't going to happen. It's our own, so we shouldn't have to even ask. It is ours.
We kept producing piece of land after piece of land after piece of land. Every time I'd say, we can't do this, we can't do that. We had land that was too close to civilization. We had land that didn't have hunting and fishing. This is serious. What are we doing?
They wanted us to take all this land that was just swamp and forest and that, but some places weren't livable. So why are you going to agree to that?
We kept looking for 8 or 9 months. Eventually, there were several pieces of state land up in Clinton County. And there were huge pieces of land for sale next to it, which were actually quite decent pieces of land with very good agricultural and good fishing. And it was a great piece of property, but it wasn't our property. I said, well, I can't give you the land. They just casually said to me, we have friends.
Thanks. More dishes that sparkle and turn out clean.
And Maytag, and Maytag Appliances.
The dependability people.
Loved indigenous folk, and she bought the land for them. And they weren't looking for a deed as long as we let them have the land. They said, we didn't want you to give us the land anyhow. It's our land that you're sitting on. The Turtle Island Trust, in order to make it clear that it was not the natives who were owning their own land, was set up for them, in trust for them. And the Mohawks leased the land from the Turtle Island Trust. That was the deal.
A group of Mohawk Indians 3 years ago moved into a former girls' camp, and they've stayed there ever since. Today, that dispute with the state of New York was settled. Gary Shepard reports from Eagle Bay, New York.
The Indians said they wanted to live according to their traditions, which was not possible on reservations where there was crime and drug abuse. The idea was to become self-sufficient and live off the land. They finally agreed today to move from their current 600-acre site in Eagle Bay to 5,700 acres of state forest in Clinton County. Officials called it the beginning of a new era of relations with the Indians.
We live constantly in fear. If it's different, it's wrong and dangerous. That's always the first instinct. But a civilized society can learn to overcome that first instinct.
We have a lot of children here. They have Mohawk immersion now, so they learn the language. It's a lot different from before.
My mother wasn't a speaker of the language. That's kind of the main thing is why we're here, to learn what is ours and start over and to actually have a place where we can take care of ourselves. Everything that is here belongs to the people. It's important for us to continue as a people.
When you consider that Mohawk people have been living in close physical proximity to this very powerful imperialistic entities from the time of contact, yet we still retain the core of our identity, still retain language, still retain culture, still retain spirituality. I think that's miraculous. You can reassert your traditional beliefs and customs without having to go through the courts or federal or state legislation. Just simply going there, saying, we are here. Repatriation of that land is something that's not only possible, it's necessary. And that's the way, I think the only way the Mohawk people have, seriously, as a way of surviving as truly sovereign people. So I expect there'll be other Ganienkehs